Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Wide Open Throttle. Joining me today, Ed Lowe, Editor-in-Chief of Motor Trend, but also a bunch of guys from Ford. Raj Nair, who heads Ford's global product development. Joel Piaskowski, who is the exterior design director for the new Mustang. And Joe Hinrichs, who runs Ford of the Americas. So guys, no surprises what we're here to talk about, a very auspicious moment in Motor Trend's history, your history, because we were there the first time around, 50 years ago, the launch of the Mustang, and here we are 50 years later, half a century later, to talk about the latest and greatest Mustang. And Raj, must have been quite an achievement getting this one through the system.
Yeah, when you do a Mustang at Ford, there's always a lot of visibility, a lot of pressure, and we've really been looking forward to this day. We've been working really hard, the team's been working really hard, and it's almost hard to believe that we're here.
What would be how do you approach doing a car that is so iconic like the Mustang? Where do you start? How do you avoid becoming trapped by history?
Now that is the hard part. We've got 50 years of great heritage in the Mustang. And we've also got a lot of ideas of how to bring new technology to the vehicle, improve the attributes, but probably that aspect of modernizing the look of the vehicle, yet maintaining the heritage of 50 years of Mustang. So when it rolls down the road, it's unmistakably a Mustang. And when you look at the vehicle, I think Joel and Murray Callum and the rest of the design team have just done a masterful job in finding that balance. It's clearly a Mustang, but you look at it, it's clearly a very modern vehicle. And when you put it in the showroom of the rest of the Ford vehicles, it's clearly got the rest of the Ford DNA. Which
one of you guys would you say got involved first with this generation? Like if you go back into the development, like who you have design, you're based on the engineering side, you're in charge of kind of everything else. Who got the call? Like, all right, we're doing it. It's green light.
Well, so product development has all of that, the product planning, the studio, the engineering, the powertrains. And we start our planning pretty early. So planning for the program probably started in 2009. At the time, Joe and I were both actually in Asia Pacific. Joel, you were...
I came on board in 2010, just as we were
right,
really getting underway in the studio.
As far as the planning of doing a Mustang,
right.
Probably Joel came in 2010. We were back end of 2010.
You were back in 2010, I came back the end of last year.
Yeah,
but
so
because it was a global program, we were all touching it in different ways.
Right.
A little bit different this time.
Right, and the fact that it was going to be a global program from the beginning. And I came into the engineering role when I came back to the US, so I was doing the engineering side before heading all of product development a year and a half ago. So it's a big team, right? People always, particularly when things are a success, right? Everybody wants to be the father of that particular project. But the way it really works is it really is a team effort. Doing a new vehicle is probably the biggest team sport ever. And whether it's the engineers, whether it's the designers, the product planners, or manufacturing, purchasing, sales and marketing, it takes really a full team to deliver that. And a sign of when a great car comes out is there was a great team behind it.
But I can say from a business perspective, the way it starts is we start with what does our portfolio want to be in the future? What's the refresh rates? What new products are we going to bring to bear? What can we afford? What's the profitability? And then Raj's team, along with the business units, get together and decide how we're going to allocate that capital and those resources over the next many years. The Mustang Cadence would fit into that process. And then once we would give the go-ahead of we're going to fit it into this process, this timeline, this amount of money, this everything, then the team is put together as Raj suggested, and we go. So the genesis is really more of a business planning and product portfolio discussion, and then it's all down to the execution.
But the Mustang is now an absolutely unique product in the Ford lineup. It's the only rear-wheel drive car platform you have. How much did the fact that it was a Mustang inform you on having to do a rear drive platform, which otherwise possibly wouldn't make economic sense?
Well, the product development team was pretty clear that in order to keep Mustang technologically advanced and take it to the next generation and be able to sell it around the world, we needed to go to a new platform. And a lot of attributes are tied to that. and that has a bill associated with it, and we needed to sign up for that. But that was an easy decision because Mustang is a core part of our product portfolio in North America. It's an icon, as you know, in our business, and we will always keep Mustang, forefront in our portfolio. That wasn't the hard decision. The harder decision was really around, okay, how far do we go on the global scale, and what does that mean to the product? Because there were a lot of rumors and theories going around that because we were going to offer it to be sold in more markets around the world, that somehow we would change the DNA or what it meant to be a Mustang. And we were all very clear, and Raj and his team were very clear, that that wasn't where we were going to start from. Because the reason why so many people around the world love Mustang, the reason why so many people know about Mustang, the reason why we do research in markets around the world and the top 10 vehicles they associate with Ford, our Mustang's always in that list, even though we don't sell it in those markets, is because of what it really is. It's an American pony car, and it needs to be true to that DNA, even if we're going to sell it around the world, because that's what they know about Mustang.
So Joel, as exterior design chief for Mustang, I mean, how many sleepless nights did you have thinking about this car? I mean, how far did you take, how far can you take it away from what Mustang was, but still keep it a Mustang?
Great question, Angus. What we really tried to do to modernize the car was to re-architect or reproportion the car to give it a much more exotic sports car-like flavor. And in doing so, we had some good discussions with the senior management team, Raj and Joe and Mark, and it was really a group effort to roll up our sleeves and get down to the core essence of what Mustang needs to be for the future. And in doing so, we made some pretty critical decisions, even late in the program, Raj, that were, I think, really very important to the final product. And that's, with that spirit, we got a great new product that's coming out that has a world-class proportion and even really goes back to the heritage of what Mustang is as far as its classic front-engine, rear-drive, fastback profile.
But the proportions changed quite substantially, and I don't think the photos that we've all seen really do it justice, because the car seems much less, the Mustang, the original 64.5 car, of course, was based on the Falcon and had some Falcon hardpoint architectures. This car's lower, much lower.
Much lower.
And dramatically changed. It's much more like a sports car than a sporty coupe offer.
You had to re-engineer the floor pan and some of the front suspension pickup points, right? I mean,
It's a full new platform.
when does that conversation start? I mean, was that?
Well,
Truly.
that's probably one of the late decisions Joel's referring to. And we had certain hard points and size of vehicle in mind, and we had a certain view of the balance we wanted in modernizing the vehicle, as well as staying true to the heritage. But as we walk down that path, proportions are so key in any vehicle that you do. And it's not just the individual language. If it's language on the wrong proportions, it's just not going to look right.
How does that go though? So do you get to a point in a clay or in a sketch and you go, it's just not going to work like this. We got to go here. Well, we can't do that unless the cars. And then all right, who's going to go ask Raj whether we can make this happen? Is that kind of how it goes? And they've got to go to you and say, really?
Yeah, and that type of discussion is actually something that is why we still work in clay. Because that's something you can only pick up in a full-size clay, and walking around the vehicle and getting a very intuitive sense of the scale of the vehicle. And that can't be done in as much as CGI is improved. Can't be done in renderings, it can't be done in quarter scales. So full-size clays, and when we were having that discussion and we did free up the constraints for the team and allow them to go wider, allow them to really push the vehicle down. And when we saw that, we said, okay, that's what we need to do. Now that's a big decision, right? Because that means we go back into some of the engineering we've already started and redo it to the proportions that are really going to work.
What are the chances we could see where you got to and then had to ask that question?
Well, when we do the 75th anniversary book, probably some of those photos will show up.
But that's why we do very frequently, actually, senior management reviews, so that we, the executive team, can have a sense for those proportions, because we're not designers. But Raj and his team will take us through, okay, here's where we are, and what do you think? And because we'll have to make business decisions or judgment decisions on resources or funding or whatever. And your eyes will tell you, even if you're not a designer, that those proportions don't work or that doesn't feel just right. And so that's where we'll have the conversation of here's what we want. Then the team will propose what they want to do, and then we can make decisions on the business side of where we go from there.
All right, Joel, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How do you convince a guy who's not a designer to see it the way you see it, to make that case that, man, we have to go this route? And do you like make sure to cozy up to the guys who think like, oh, he gets it, like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to pick your battles, right, for a lot of this stuff. How do you do it? Because part of your job is not just drawing the thing; it's actually selling it, right?
Of course, absolutely. But the best tool to do that is to do it in 3 dimensions, as we've just mentioned, and to have that physical clay property out in the courtyard next to other models or current vehicles is the best way to really convey the idea and the message that we're really trying to get across.
I can't get over how dramatic this is. I mean, millimeters make a difference in design. You can shift a panel a few millimeters. I mean, the wheelbase is the same, but you've lowered the hood by 1.3 inches. You've lowered the rear deck by 2.8 inches and the roofline by 1.5 inches. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're massive changes.
Yeah.
And the car's gone out at 1.6 inches wider. It's completely different.
It is completely different. It's an all-new platform, and a great job by the design and engineering team that we've done all that, lowered the vehicle. We've also lowered the belt line, so the visibility, one of the traditional advantages the Mustang has had over its competition, is uncompromised, and actually interior space and headroom has increased. So that's the interaction between design engineers and our design team in the studio. That has to happen simultaneously to really get that optimal solution.
But you got to tell us, because everybody is going to want to know, what does lowering the roof by that much and widening the track, what does that do for driving, for the drive, for the performance, for the handling?
Well, it's not just lowering the exterior metal, right? But lowering all those components gets that CG lower. Obviously, widening the track, and particularly an independent rear suspension, really improves the grip at the rear. So much so that we found we're really going to have to do the double ball joint front suspension to improve the performance of the front. And one of the great things about the new vehicle is the balance and the nimbleness and the, what we would call, the width of that performance envelope. Today's vehicle, particularly the Boss, has got a great performance envelope, but you've got to be on your game, right? You've got to have pretty narrow areas of steering angle, pretty narrow area of throttle input, and how you're feeding it out, and it'll be a great car to drive. Get out of that area, and you're going to have to be on your game to catch it. This vehicle is got a wider area and more overall capability, and so it's easier to drive fast. It's easier to recover. It's easier, particularly with the suspension, to really, push it on the track, ride the curbs a little bit more. So just those aspects. When we talk about we want to flatter the novice but reward the expert, that's what this car is really about. And so you're going to get out of this car thinking you're a better driver than you actually are.
Can you give us any numbers, any deltas?
We're not ready to talk numbers, as you know, Ed, but you're going to like it.
All right.
But this car,
I know you're going to like it.
This car also, though, interestingly enough, there's a phrase that would send a chill of fear into any enthusiast's heart: 4-cylinder Mustang.
It's not just any 4-cylinder, but it's a 2.3-liter direct injection turbocharged Ecoboost 4-cylinder. That's, we're not talking specific horsepower numbers, but it'll be higher than 305 horsepower. And when you drive that vehicle, particularly with our Ecoboost engines, the torque curve is so wide, and the balance of the vehicle with that engine in it, I think it's going to be the surprise. I think people are really going to love driving the 2.3 Ecoboost. Not to mention the fuel efficiency. We're projecting it's going to be best-in-class fuel efficiency. So I always remind people, 305 horsepower. My very first new car I ever bought was a 1988 Mustang GT. And I was so proud of that 5-liter V8 at 225 horsepower. And now the entry 3.7-liter V6 is 300 horsepower. So we're talking, pretty significant capability even at the entry vehicle. And to get 305 horsepower plus class-leading fuel economy, plus the type of torque curve and balance that you get in the vehicle, I think it's going to be a winner.
Joe, do you think American buyers are ready for the idea of a 4-cylinder Mustang?
I think they are. Again, certainly when it's turbocharged, because of the balance between fuel economy and the torque curve that Raj talked about. And we're seeing it on other products. Now we're 40% of our F-150s are V6 EcoBoost engines. Who would have thought that years ago we were 100% V8s? Yeah. So the American consumer has, one, gotten used to the fact that displacement isn't what it used to be, V8, V6, or I4. And second of all, fuel economy matters to everybody when they're buying a vehicle today. And the technology is so advanced that the driving dynamics are what matter, and the fuel economy. And as we said, with the 2.3-liter EcoBoost engine in the Mustang, we believe you're going to get the best of both.
So it's going to be interesting, isn't it? The V6 is your entry-level model, then comes the 4-cylinder, and then the V8.
That's right. But when you look at horsepower numbers and fuel efficiency, you're getting a lot with that EcoBoost.
Well, I'm just gonna, this is a real curveball. Did you guys engineer any room in that front bumper for like a giant front mount intercooler for that turbocharged 4-cylinder? Is there any space to maybe put something in there to, look at these guys, they're like sphinxes.
Well, whenever we do a new platform, we're always thinking ahead, so we're always going to provide some protection for some future enhancements.
Man, can't get anything out of these guys.
When the previous gen car came out, the 2005, I was fairly critical of the fact that it had a live rear axle. I'm pleased to see that with this car, Mustang finally joins the 21st century with independent rear end.
Well, I think we had a pretty good solid rear axle car, and I think even you guys, were pretty pleased with how the boss reacted with a solid rear axle. But at the same time, as Joe mentioned, pretty early, we felt to take it to the next level, we needed to go independent rear suspension. So we designed the platform from the beginning with an independent rear suspension, integral link. Really happy with the geometry, really happy with the spring rates and damper rates and bushing rates that we've been able to achieve. Not just in delivering, the handling, but now the combination of the ride, the NVH, and the handling we can achieve with the suspension system. So really pleased with it, so much so that, as I said, it's got so much capability, it caused us to relook at the front end and go to the double ball joint front end, which gets us that virtual joint, allows us to package a lot bigger brake system. And, it's the most capable platform we've ever had for the Mustang.
And having the independent rear suspension really, did it allow you to go global with the car? Do you feel like you could really kind of only sell a live axle to Americans, and Europeans wouldn't take that, and China maybe wouldn't take it, or Asia Pacific?
I think even if the program had been just a North American program, we would have gone independent rear suspension. Clearly it helps the global proposition, and we were thinking very early on that we were going to go global with it, but I don't think that was the driver. Even if it had been the traditional North American market, we would have gone independent rear suspension.
And off of that, you guys did the launch, 6 cities, Barcelona, Sydney, Shanghai, Dearborn, New York, and Los Angeles. Very different cities, 5 different time zones. Is there any similarity in the Mustang buyer? Like when you look at the Mustang buyer in the Americas, like, is it the same guy who's going to buy the turbo 4-cylinder in the U.S. as it is in Shanghai or in Barcelona or somewhere in Europe, or is it, is it a different price point? Are you positioning the car differently? How would you?
Well, I would answer it this way. From our research says the buyer's desires and lifestyles are similar. You may have a GT buyer that wants the 5.0 in North America. That same profile individual may want the 2-liter EcoBoost in Germany, let's say. But the general feelings about Mustang, American sports car, pony car, the sense of freedom, the soul of the Ford brand, these things resonate anywhere where you are, whether you're in Australia, the data shows it, whether you're in China or UK or wherever. So that aspect will be similar, and their wants are similar. The driving dynamics, the capabilities, all the technology in the vehicle, the infotainment system, the shaker, stereo system, all those are similar. Yeah, the powertrain displacement and the powertrains may be a little bit different, but the customers want similar things. They love style. They love the retro connection of Mustang, but they want it to be new and modern, and we think the team's done a great job of connecting that. It's amazing with the internet today and all the information out there. As I said before, so many customers around the world have access to the same information, and they want the best, and they want what other people can have other places. And the great thing about our One Ford plan with all the global platforms and the ability to sell around the world is we can now give those products, the best products we have around the world, to our customers, whether it's Fiesta here in North America, Fiesta ST, for example, or whether it's Mustang to Germany.
Speaking of like those variants, like Fiesta ST, does one Ford? I know it's a sort of it's an overarching product concept. Does it apply to the future Mustang variants? Like, will all markets get whatever comes after GT, GT, or there be like regional specific high performance versions, like a turbocharged 4-cylinder that you'd only see in China or?
No, I mean, our performance strategy, executed by our SVT team or our RS team, which is actually the same team, just under different monikers, is a global strategy. And levels of performance we have expectations for putting an ST nameplate on, or putting an RS nameplate on, or putting a Shelby GT500 nameplate on. And so that's consistent. Certainly, the type of markets that those vehicles cater to can be different. And so the offering of the Mustang and all the markets it'll be in, if we were to do a high performance version of it, would certainly be the vast majority of those, but perhaps not every single one of those. And that's true for whether it's the Fiesta ST or the Focus ST or the Raptor or any of those type of vehicles. But the key thing is it's a global strategy, and the team that does it is actually a global team. And down to the engineering attributes we expect is a global standard.
Okay, well, who would have thought 50 years ago when Ford unveiled the pony car for the very first time, a group of journalists and engineers and car guys would be sitting around talking about a new Mustang. That's all we've got time for on Wide Open Throttle this week. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.